Freeman.
Thank you so much for coming out to show that Albany is united for students with disabilities. I'm Ann Cupolo, and I'm one of the 10 co-founders of the Albany Disability Squad, and I will be co-emceeing this rally with one of the other founding members, I can't talk louder. Anyway, my co-MC is Neri Castillo-McIntyre, who is another one of the co-founders of the squad. So our first presenter is going to be Zoe Oswald, and she's a 4th grade student at Cornell, and she's going to be reading us 2 poems about her brother and her friend.
Hello, my name is Zoe, and this is a poem I wrote about my brother. Think of a baby dragon with its strong, hyper body. Picture a startled rhino running away from a fluttery butterfly. Imagine a delighted dog chasing its own tail. Think of an innocent sprout that will one day be a wise tree. Picture a curious squirrel hustling across a power line. Imagine a restless hummingbird bringing the fun. Imagine John. Just like ADHD and Dogman, John is always up for anything. He is 7 years old, funny, sensitive, and lovable. But more than anything, he is very energetic. This means he has a hard time sitting still in class, and it's challenging for him to pay attention to some things for too long. This isn't his fault. His brain is just different. John is really smart, but he's struggling with learning how to read and write, even though he tries. He needs to use all his senses to learn. He can learn anything, just not the way most of us do. Disabilities don't mean you can't learn. They just mean you learn differently. I miss having my brother go to school in Albany like me. I don't think it's really fair that he had to leave because it didn't have what he needed. I hope that someday our schools can have everything they need to teach all kinds of students. Because separate is not the same. It's always better together. This is a similar poem I wrote about my good friend who has Down syndrome. Imagine a bold lemur that won't be a follower. Think of a beautiful peacock that won't stay in the shadows. Picture a playful dolphin ready to make you laugh. Imagine a curious monkey itching to see more. Think of a nice bunny, relaxed, but fast when it needs to be. Picture a kind capybara, always willing to help out. Imagine my friend. It was nice to see my friend after a whole year of being out of school. I really enjoy hanging out with her, and I'm so glad she's in my class. She's kind, has a great sense of humor, and really good ideas. It just takes her a little longer to sometimes express herself. I know that some kids with disabilities go to a special class, but I'm really glad she doesn't. She's different, but we all are. And that's just proof we aren't robots.
Thank you, Zoe. Okay, so with apologies to those of you who are closer to the speaker, I'm about to speak louder because some folks cannot hear us on the other side, so consider yourself warned, all right? All right, so disability rights are civil rights and human rights. Children of all backgrounds and abilities can engage, learn, and make meaningful contributions to their community. Yet, in Albany, some of the most vulnerable students have been educationally abandoned. We are calling attention to glaring inequities for students with disabilities and calling for a new vision for special education with transparency, stability, prompt evaluations, timely intervention, a focus on academic achievement, and ultimately a renewed commitment to educational equity and justice for all.
think I'm going to be able to follow that up with quite that level of fervor. We recognize that board trustees, district administrators, faculty, and staff work hard every day to deliver the best for all of Albany's children. However, the problems that we raise have been with us for a long time. They predate the current board, the current administration, and the pandemic. They have persisted despite the best efforts of generations of special education teachers. These issues are systemic with long historical precedents in K-12 education here in Albany. We need bold steps to fix them.
And I should just say off the cuff, while we recognize that these issues predate this board and this administration, we do not take the responsibility away from the board, the current board, and the current administration to do something about it. We have tried to work with the district administration to advance the needs of students with disabilities starting last spring, in the summer, and through the fall of 2020. They listened. We told them what our community of students needed, but they never responded with any meaningful action. We are not willing to wait any longer, so here we are having this rally today. The problems in special education predated the pandemic, but the pandemic has exacerbated the issues and shed a light on the special education first and support students with disabilities last.
It has been hard for us to make our voices heard in school board meetings, as the comment period for each person is limited to 1 or 2 minutes. This rally is our opportunity for the entire community to be seen and to share our stories with the district administration and the school board. So now we will begin hearing from our speakers. As we go along, we will also be sharing Albany Disability Squad's demands of the Albany Unified School District. After this first section, we will open up the microphone for other stories. If you would like to speak, please fill out a yellow speaker registration card that's here on the table in the front. Okay, so our first demand is about vision. Special education in AUSD is in perpetual disarray. There have been 4 special education directors in the past 3 years. During this time, the position has been eliminated, brought back, merged with student services, then brought back again at a lower rank. In the meantime, staff morale has plummeted and student achievement has continued to lag behind. We need vision and leadership at the highest levels to meet the needs of our most vulnerable learners. I'm now going to turn things over to Natasha Kokar, who is going to read a testimonial from a parent who wished to remain anonymous.
As parents, we have watched in despair as our child has spiraled into a mental health crisis over the past few years. As steadfast supporters of AUSD, we know firsthand that there are many caring and concerned staff members. What has been hard to understand is the lack of leadership and information about our options as our child's needs increased. Until this reached a level where safety was a constant concern and education was essentially impossible for our child to access, we were never told we could request an evaluation for special education. An evaluation that might have helped us all protect and support a bright, capable child in need of intensive interventions and fund the kind of education program they needed and deserved. Our child may not have had to be placed outside the district to get this intensive care. Our family needed help to understand and use important disability and civil rights protections, but we were forced to seek that information elsewhere. Our child and so many like them deserve proactive, collaborative approaches designed to keep children learning engaged, and succeeding in our schools.
Thank you, Natasha. Our second demand is integration and equity. Special education at USD is a siloed program. Separate is inherently unequal. In Albany, the evidence is everywhere. In May 2020, 70% of budget cuts fell on special education to protect the district's core program, sending a powerful message that special education is not a priority. The special education director position was merged with student services, then with Albany Children's Services. In the meantime, the director of curriculum instruction and assessment bears no responsibility for special education. For decades, paraprofessional salaries were at poverty levels with a recent modest increase. Paraprofessional absenteeism persisted for years, prompting protests from general education teachers unable to serve the educational needs of diverse learners in their classrooms. The Special Education Advisory Committee lacks clear direction and strategy and does not include representative voices from general education teachers and students. We could go on. But now we're going to turn it to Ben, who is going to give us a larger context of the Albany Disability Squad's work, and a shout out to Ann Freeman and Tredef.
Thank you, Neri. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, everyone who has come here today. I want to say a little bit about the history behind this movement that you are a part of. The work we are doing is grounded in the civil rights movement.
Thank you. That's great.
And it's grounded in the equal protection under the law that's granted in the United States Constitution, 14th Amendment. And one of the most remarkable decisions that came out of this was the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954, which is one of the great hallmarks of the civil rights movement. And it said, separate is not equal. It was brought to support African American students who are in separate schools and were not allowed to have access to the same resources that white children had. But this decision, one of the most important decisions in the United States Supreme Court's history, has had incredible ramifications for people with disabilities as well. Because at that time, in 1954, it didn't matter if you were white or black or what your background was. If you had a disability and your family brought you to the school district could say, I'm sorry, no, we cannot educate you. It was legal to say, no, we cannot educate your child. That's where we've come from. And we know this intimately because my son Zachary and my daughter Adeline, their grandmother, my mother-in-law, was a special education teacher in the 1950s. And she worked at a school that was funded by a rich, wealthy benefactor outside Muskegon, Michigan. And the only reason that school existed is because a rich person decided that some of these kids in this community should get an education. And if you didn't have a rich benefactor, then what you had was a church basement, and you had a dedicated volunteer in the community, usually a mom, who said, I want these kids to have something. And so she would create a class in a church basement. That's where education for people with disabilities has come from. And it wasn't until the 1970s when two lawsuits, the Parks decision and the Mills decision, they established the first foundation in law that says every child has a right to an education. Every child. And it took parents like us who brought that lawsuit in Pennsylvania. They brought it, I think, in Maryland. And following that, then Congress had to take action because all of a sudden there was a movement all over the country, an extension of the civil rights movement that led to people saying our children have a right to an education, a fundamental right. And that led to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which had Section 504. Some of you here might have children with a 504 plan. It's because the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 provided that right. And this is not ancient history. This is not ancient history. It's with us here, and it's with us now. Several years ago, when I was advocating for Zachary, it was routine for the Board of Trustees here in Albany to basically say, and actually from the prior superintendent as well, to basically say special education is an unfunded mandate. The federal government has mandated that we provide special education and they don't fund it. Well, that's understandable. As the Albany Disability Squad, we want the federal government to fund special education too. But what's the message behind the message? The message behind the message is that it's not our responsibility. It's somebody else's responsibility. And we're doing you a favor here in Albany if we fund your kids. If we fund your kids' education, we're doing you a favor. The Albany Disability Squad disagrees. You're not doing us a favor because a real community supports every child. Every child deserves an education. And we saw that last May as well. And it might have been a slip of the tongue. I don't want to, but we saw that last May, as Neri mentioned, when 70% of cuts in response to the global pandemic, we had to balance the budget here in Albany, so 70% of those cuts were directly affecting kids in special education. And why was that? What was the justification for that? The justification was we have to protect our core program. Well, the Albany Disability Squad disagrees. Our core program includes kids with disabilities. It's a fundamental right and a fundamental duty and responsibility. They are part of this community. And so, in closing my remarks, I want to give a shout out to the people who made these rights possible for our kids today. In particular, I want to give a shout out to DREDF. Cheryl Feast is here from DREDF. She's a member of the Disability Squad, and she has been one of our most vital resources. Thank you, Cheryl. I want to also recognize Ann Cupolo Freeman. Some of you, thank you for coming in. There's a long story that could be told, but back in 1977, after the 504 law was passed by Congress, nobody implemented it. It just sat there. They said it's going to cost too much money. We can't do it. Nobody implemented it. So what happened? There were demonstrations by disability activists all across this country. And in San Francisco, 150 activists, including Ann, thank you very much, took over the federal building in downtown San Francisco for 26 days until they forced the Carter administration to implement the 504, Section 504. And I want to thank those generations of activists who have made our rights possible today. Thank you. And in closing my remarks, I just want to, I want to have a little moment to kind of celebrate the generations of civil rights activists from all the way back in the 50s and earlier up into the 1970s. Generations of activists who have made these rights possible and have given us a foot to stand on here. And so to do that, I have asked my son Zachary, who used to be in the Albany Middle School band, but he's not able to read music, so he's not able to stay. He really wasn't allowed to stay in the band. But in the 5th grade band, he learned Ode to Joy, and he is going to play Ode to Joy for us today as a way to thank the generations of activists who have made these rights possible.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Zachary. I should just add one comment to Ben's remarks. Yes, it is a usual trope to say this is an unfunded mandate. It is a shortcut to say we don't care and we want help. But it is not true. Special education is funded. It's not funded at the levels it should be, but it is funded. Districts get money from the federal government conditioned upon serving its students with disabilities. So it is not an unfunded mandate. Our third demand, transparency. Too often, AUSD treats families with students in special education like adversaries. Important rights, like student confidentiality, are all too often deployed towards cynical ends. To thwart transparency, to keep families in the dark, and to evade accountability. To counter this trend, the Albany Disability Squad recently submitted a formal Public Records Act request under California's Sunshine Law to demand meaningful data on special education assessments, service delivery, and monitoring. After a district request for an extension, a meaningful response is due today, April 2nd. And thank you, Executive Director Ritchie. We did receive a response. We obviously haven't had a chance to read it. Thank you. We need transparent and thorough reporting for accountability and real reform. So now we're going to turn it over for a testimonial on speech therapy.
Hi everybody, my name is Swetha and the testimonial I'm reading is sent by someone anonymously. We still don't have a qualified speech therapist and the legally guaranteed hours that were missed at the beginning of last year because the district hadn't been able to hire a speech therapist. They were never made up. I reached out to the principal and the director of special education, and the response that I received was that we're working on it and that a plan is being developed. This plan to make up missed hours never materialized, and the speech therapist last year said that it was outside the scope of the job to make up missed hours. I would also add that because of our experiences, I don't trust the school district or that they have the best interests in our kiddos' hearts. The year that my child was in kindergarten, his IEP team wanted to assess him for social and emotional concerns as well as his ability to access the general education classroom. It took the school psychologist 3 months to produce a list of possible assessments that they would administer. After all that time, many of the assessments were for children who were 6 or older. She hadn't even bothered to really get to know my child. If she had, the psychologist would have realized that my child didn't turn 6 until after the school year ended. The principal at the time effectively said that although the form gave us the option to consent or not, that our only choice was to give consent, and that the district could force us to give consent if it was in the best interest of the child. We fought back by asking that the program specialists be included in our IEP meetings, and we even looked into suing the district. Now we record all our IEP meetings, and it's made everyone a lot more honest and civil.
I just want to underscore something that both Mary and Sweta alluded to, which is that some of the people who sent us testimonies for this rally sent them anonymously. And the reason that they do this is that they are afraid that any kind of legal proceedings they may get into will be prejudiced against them. So we really need much more transparency.
And less intimidation.
And less intimidation. Okay, our fourth demand, this is our third or fourth, is stability. Students with disabilities and mental health issues are among the most in need of stability and consistency in their educational experience. However, as students are finally returning to in-person instruction, We lack the faculty to educate students with disabilities. Look at the evidence. The Albany Middle School special day class had no functioning instructor for most of the fall of 2020. Albany Middle School is losing all 4 of its special education teachers this coming fall. 3 are resigning and 1 was released from their contract. What kind of outcry would there be if 75% of the general education teachers at an Albany campus resigned? At the high school, 1 experienced teacher may be leaving. Another has reduced hours to 50%. The only full-time educational psychologist providing counseling and educationally related mental health services and conducting evaluations in-house has been released for next year. Most paraeducators were laid off last spring. We don't know how many have been rehired. Again, this goes back to the transparency problem. In addition, frontline staff report that morale is at an all-time low and many are exploring other opportunities. Our most vulnerable learners need stability and continuity in their instructional staff. AUSD needs to retain effective, qualified special educators and fully staffed positions based on student needs. New staff need professional development, mentoring, and oversight, and those needs must be built into the staffing coverage models. And now I'm going to turn the mic over to Eleanor Hanley. Okay, to Daniel Cardozo, who is going to read something from his daughter Eleanor and speak for himself.
Hi, everybody. I miss you guys so much. I've been a parent here for about 13 years. I've done everything from pretend to operate tools in the Cornell crew, to throw a silly Olympics, to I'm currently preparing a movie night for the Hispanic Student Cup at the high school. I get involved. And in return, I feel like I've been blessed with a really good education for my kids. So I kind of want to talk about what's working, what's going right, and ask why the district is intending to stop it. My daughter Eleanor is a 10th grader, and she couldn't make it today because, to quote her, human interaction is exhausting. She's autistic, she suffers from anxiety, and that means this would be a lot. A classroom, and sometimes a lot. And so in addition to going to the support lab for class and having adapted requirements for assignments, she also sees that very psychologist at Albany High School. Crystal Jacobs has worked with my daughter for about 2 years. That's 2 years of building trust, 2 years of getting to know my child, getting to know her struggles and her needs, and delivering with excellent care. So I'm just gonna say it, Crystal Jacobs is my hero, and she may have saved my child's life this year. But, according to our new SPED director, she's gotta go. According to a vote taken by the school board, she's gotta go. And I don't understand why. The parts that are working, the parts that are doing well, are being cast out from this system. There's only 2 reasons you let somebody go when they're doing a good job. Either the boss doesn't like you, or maybe you're due for tenure and you're gonna cost too much. I don't know what it is. I don't care. The people who do a good job here are leaving or considering leaving because of decisions like this. No wonder morale is low. Why would you stick your neck out? Why would you put in the extra work? Why would you take that extra care if you're going to be treated like a cost item on a spreadsheet instead of a human being that contributes to education? That's not bold leadership. That's bean counting. And our kids deserve better. disrupting the mental care that's being provided to our kids is going to introduce instability. They have to find a new person to trust. They have to see if that person gets them. You guys ever seen a therapist? You ever seen the wrong therapist? It is not pretty. And that's what our kids might be in danger of having to endure next year. So no wonder morale is low. So no wonder people are maybe thinking about phoning it in a little bit. But not Crystal. Because at my last IEP meeting, when we said, guys, it's too much, looking at the grades in areas is giving Eleanor panic attacks. Because Shelley Ball is right, that software basically stresses you out every day. And we need a homework reduction, and dang it, can we just, try something like pass-fail just for the end of the year? My team that serves my kids said, yeah, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. Because they're doing it right. So why would we want one of them to go away? And in spite of that, in spite of knowing she's not being renewed, Crystal then said, you know what? We're going to put together a video tutorial on how to make these adaptations to Aries for teachers that are working with your kid. She's already out the door, and she's still taking extra time to take care of my kid. People like that should be rewarded, not dismissed. Thank you.
Our fifth demand today is prompt evaluations. Both parent reports and data recently released by the district indicate that the Albany Unified School District is grossly out of compliance on legally mandated timelines for evaluating students in need. In some cases, for more than a year, these reports strongly suggest that more than 100 students are significantly struggling while their families wait for their evaluations to be completed in order to see if their child is eligible for 504 or special education services. Justice delayed is justice denied. Struggling students need evaluations now. Now I have a question. Our next speaker was going to be Kelly Jacobs, and I want to check if she's here. Now if she's not, I want to point out that she cannot be here because she is dealing with an emergency for which she has not received the appropriate support from the district. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, or actually to Amy, and talk about our next demand.
Okay, thank you, Neri. Our next demand is timely interventions. Numerous AUSD students with disabilities could not access their education at all during distance learning without a person sitting next to them. They were left behind because they didn't have the necessary equipment, staff support, or specialized services they required to benefit from remote education. Still, other students wait desperately for needed mental health interventions. Struggling students need prompt evaluations and interventions to meet their academic, developmental, and mental health needs now. And now Julie Paulson is going to read us another one of our anonymous testimonials.
So this is an anonymous testimonial. The lack of in-person school has been terrible. I am a single mom and sole provider to a student with a significant developmental disability who has regressed to the point where they are no longer able to speak. They used to be verbal. Now they are not. This is heartbreaking. My student needs to have someone to sit with them to help them access their education via Zoom. The district failed to provide them this critical in-person service despite being asked. I have to pay for a private paraeducator at my own expense. To make things worse, I have lost my job because I cannot find enough people to sit with my student for distance learning. I was not able to perform my job. I am devastated, and I do not know how we'll be able to make it moving forward. The district could have helped, but did not. My student was not able to join the special education hub at their school because the district needed to hire a para with specialized medical training. The district failed to secure an adequately trained paraeducator who was also cleared for COVID in a timely manner. I was told that my student could begin attending school yesterday, but when we got there, I found out that again, there was no para trained in handling their condition. After waiting so long, this was a huge disappointment. I ended up doing a brief pet training for the para. It took only 5 minutes. My vulnerable student has not been adequately served. That said, there are many committed and effective Albany Unified School District staff members. The challenges have stemmed from much turnover and lack of leadership in special education at the district administration level, resulting in a chaotic situation. It seems like the district has lost important institutional knowledge, and students are needlessly suffering as a result. Again, this is anonymous.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, our last demand has to do with academic achievement. Across the board, students with disabilities have some of the worst learning outcomes in California. In Albany, according to a 2019 California Department of Education data, the graduate for all students is 92%, whereas the rate for students with disabilities is only 63%. Of Albany students completing high school, 63% were career and college ready, and only 14% of students with disabilities were so prepared. AUSD needs a proactive approach to compensatory education to address learning loss during the pandemic and new approaches to educational programming to overcome the achievement gap that impacts the most vulnerable students. Okay, and now I would like to invite Mari Dancer to share her experience with us.
Hi, everybody. Hello, Albany parents. Can you hear me? A little louder?
There you go.
How's that?
Yeah.
There we go. Albany parents, friends, and community members, I have a prepared statement I would like to read. Many of you know me. My name is Mari. I grew up in Albany. I am the parent of identical twin boys in 9th grade at Albany High, one of whom has an IEP since 2008 when he was 3. In 2009, at the age of 4, Zachary was illegally exited by the district because I and my husband were not informed of our rights. We then had to fight our way back into help once Zachary was behind enough. In 2012, in kindergarten, when Zachary was running out of his class and school, making it to Solano Avenue, school staff said everything was fine, no need for an IEP. Our family paid for an independent neuropsychological evaluation and won back his IEP in 1st grade. However, when Zachary was found not to know his phonics at the end of first grade, the IEP team said that was also fine. Our neuropsychologist urged us to not let this reading remediation window pass us by. Our family paid again for my training in a kinesthetic reading curriculum so that I could spend 1,500 one-on-one hours teaching Zachary how to read and close a 2-year reading gap in 6 months. Other families may not know about these life-changing interventions or may not have the time or money to pursue them. Once Zachary learned how to read, I continued to teach him how to write, keep him organized, and turn in all his homework, something which he cannot remember to do. Everyone agrees my son is a very bright child, but his attention and executive functioning get in his way. This takes a toll on his academic self-confidence. While Cornell School had a good IEP team and services were delivered as legally required, our experience in the middle school is that special education is understaffed and the turnover is high. Since 2013, first grade through junior high school 2020, Zachary has never known who his push-in aide was on any given day. This lack of relationship continuity makes it hard for him to use the support he is legally entitled to receive. Thank you. In 2018, 7th grade, the IEP team tried to illegally exit Zachary yet again. Part of the problem was that the district assessor refused to take into account the intensive support I provide every single day, support that takes a toll on our entire family. I know many other families do this, or pay for tutoring or other interventions that should be provided by the district. Thank you. By 7th grade, we knew our rights and demanded an independent educational assessment paid for by the district this time, not our family. Zachary was found to be eligible and his IEP continued, partly related to how I taught him his subjects 2 to 3 hours a day at home since kindergarten. It is possible that the district may try to illegally exit Zachary at his triennial next year in 10th grade. In our 13-year experience in special education, I can tell you that what was valuable to our son and family were the academic and psychological assessments, the 1.5 years of occupational therapy, and the 8 years of speech therapy. For that, our family is extremely grateful to the district because Zachary may not have been able to learn in public school without tremendous support. Thank you. Our pervasive experience with special education is that the services are inadequate, staff turnover is a constant problem, some staff lack experience in that the district fails to provide them with the training in evidence-based, effective interventions so that resource support becomes a few minutes of tutoring rather than remediation and intervention. And staffing shortages make monitoring progress very difficult. Doing special education right takes resources, training, and most of all, leadership and commitment at the highest levels. Finally, it is heartbreaking how our most vulnerable children are structurally abandoned by a district which is motivated to exit a student, even when he or she is still eligible, so the district can save money. It is shameful how this district treats its most vulnerable children. Thank you.
Now, many of us here in the squad, and those who are not members of the squad, know that our children might not benefit from us fighting for their rights. But we are committed to this. Because when our children graduate from the district, we plan on leaving the district better than how we found it.
Yeah!
So that if special education in Albany becomes the crown jewel of all its programs, it is not only going to benefit students in special education, it's going to benefit all students. So now we're going to open it up to people who signed up to speak here on the spot.
Okay, and it is not too late to sign up. Our first speaker will be Tina Goldsmith.
All right, Tina.
Okay, thank you. Oh, good. I think I wore the wrong mask for this. Anyway, I am an Albany resident, and I just came to, I don't have a child in your district, but I just wanted to see what the issues are and how I could help. And unfortunately, I can't help with systemic issues, but what I can do is help with some specific ones. Mari mentioned that there are multisensory methods of teaching reading. I'm a credentialed English teacher, but I've worked with elementary school kids, training them or helping them learn to read with the Orton-Gillingham approach. And that is a multisensory method of teaching reading. And I wanted to offer free tutoring to families who need it right now, because I know, so if your child is having issues with reading and you think that kind of approach would help, please see me after the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. That's a completely unexpected and wonderful offer. Okay, do we have another one?
We do not have, but I think so.
Okay, so would anyone else like to come up and speak before we turn the microphone over to our partner, Cheryl Thies? Okay, Cheryl. All right.
Hi, everybody. So those of you who don't know me, I work at the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, aka DREDF. I've been there for 14 years now. I also have 5 children who've come through Albany Unified School District. I like to say that how grateful I am to the education this district has provided.
I'm not
The
sure if you're on
first
Facebook.
couple of children that came through never needed any special support, and they're the kids that our system serves so well.
And I think I
I
set the
would come up
settings
to
to
school
public so
and I would
anybody can
experience
watch it
being
as well.
greeted with,
So far,
oh,
we've
you're
got 4 people
so-and-so's
watching.
mother. Wow, what a great kid. And then there was my son. And then I suddenly came up to school and heard, could I talk to you for a minute? I don't know if any of the rest of you have had that experience, but it was a really big change where it's like, okay. So that student with the right support is now a software engineer at a cybersecurity program in Seattle. So I want to start by saying special education provided right works, and it changes lives. And it doesn't just change lives for our students. My son is paying a lot of taxes. He's, contributing to society. He was involved in some of the elections fraud stuff recently. So he found a way to use his neurodiversity to contribute. And the change that we're seeking in Albany is exactly that kind of approach. That every mind is beautiful, that everyone can contribute, and that it's our job to change the system and environment, not to require our children to suppress who they are, or be something different, or have IEPs that focus on compliance and following the rules. A couple of things that haven't been said today. One of the best things about our district is our diversity. We have so many different languages spoken here. We have so many different cultures here in Albany. And one of the issues that we need to work on is making sure that these important rights families have talked about today are provided in accessible ways. Families should not go to IEP meetings and be asked to sign legally valid, binding contracts that they can't read because they're not in their language. Children should not be denied special education evaluation because they're an English learner and everybody assumes that must be the problem, even when the parent is saying, you know, I've got other kids, I'm telling you, there's something more going on. So we need to understand the intersectionality of disability. It's not just about disability. It's also about gender. It's about race. It's about socioeconomic status. And these are issues we want the district to confront head on. And they're hard issues, and we want to appreciate that they're hard issues. None of us have perfect solutions, but we need to come together and prioritize this system and build it from the ground up to be the kind of program that every single one of us can be proud of and that we leave in good hands when we move on to our next part of our journey for our students. So thank you for listening.
So I think we're going to bring things to a close. I see some people in the crowd who I don't know, so I think that maybe mean that some of you aren't members of the squad. And if you would like to join our mailing list or get in touch with us, please come on up to the table, and we'd love to take your email address or your phone number so that we can keep in touch and work together to solve this systemic problem. Okay, thank you all.